Hi, this is Dodger, and you're watching my show.
Three, two, one, ready, go.
Jesse's been yelling across the wall for quite a while now, so if you hear some of that, I think he's feeling a lot of Final Fantasy VI feels, but I'm trying to just kind of piece together the moments when he, gets really loud. Anyway, on to our first piece of news. So maybe you don't know this, and I don't know why you would know this unless you're like a big Pokemon person, or if, you look at game news websites all the time like I do. But since like the late 90s, there have been a bunch of different Pokemon planes. So there are all different kinds of planes that are just like covered in Pokemon stuff, and they take people all over the world as planes do. But something that I didn't know is that there's still one Pokemon plane left. There's one Pokemon jet that took its last flight on April 14th of this year. The plane has retired. It took its last trip actually as part of earthquake relief efforts, so it was part of charity, and they have pictures. There's picture proof that the Pokemon jet was taken in for maintenance and all of the Pokemon were taken off of it. So there's none left. So really, I started with this topic so that we could all together as a group have a moment of silence for the final Pokemon jet. Okay, next topic. The YouPorn esports team has been told that they cannot compete because they violate ESL rules. For those of you who don't know, a while back, an esports team was made up called Team YP, or Team YouPorn, but they're known as Team YP. They've made a very conscious effort to be extremely professional in that they are not peddling porn to people. Their brand as an esports team has been very safe for work. But unfortunately, ESL has come to them and said, look, some of our ESL partners have very strict, no drug use, no pornographic, sort of rules about how they conduct their business, so we really can't let you compete. According to both parties, this was brought up about a year ago, and they started, working together to try and figure out what they could fix. Team YP was like, we'll even change our name. Nobody has to know that YouPorn is one of the companies that's, building up this team. But they said it just wasn't gonna work. Too many people know by this point. It's a bummer because, look, we all know that there are some, gambling companies that have their fingers in the pie. We know that there are companies heavily associated with tobacco that have had their fingers in the pie. So it's with a company like Team YP, with Team YP going out there and playing their games and having these kids that they're able to support in order to follow their dreams and being very professional about it, it really sucks that they're being told, no, you can't compete because the company that supports your team is a porn company. Is it technically illegal according to their rules? Maybe, I don't know, I haven't read through that stuff. But is it also technically illegal to have some of these other companies possibly peddling gambling toward minors? It's not something that's been very well kept track of, but yeah. Look, okay, we don't want esports teams peddling their boobies and dingle dangles all over the place, so we gotta shut it down. Oh wait, they weren't peddling anything like that. Oh well. Any of you big Overwatch nerds out there might find this to be a really, really cool piece of info. Apparently, Soldier 76 was a character that was created over a decade ago. He was a character for a comic book that Chris Metzen wanted to write way long time ago, and actually made an appearance in a small collection of short comics in 2004. There are old posts and things that you can read that show, what Chris Metzen wanted to go for with Soldier 76. It looks like, understandably, the backstory is going to be a little bit different, but he kept the coat. He has the same coat, and originally he had a mask, and now obviously he has a way cooler mask, but there are a lot of similarities aside from just the name, so I think that that's really neat. Imagining myself, because I've created plenty of stories and characters that will never ever ever see the light of day in any shape or form. Imagining putting a bunch of thought and love into a character and being well, that'll probably never happen, but it was fun to think about, and then getting an opportunity to throw them into a game, that's so cool. And it's not like Chris Metzen hasn't had that opportunity millions of times with Blizzard, but I don't know, since it was supposed to be an interesting side project for him, a comic book that he wanted to make, being able to say, all right, well, that comic's never gonna happen, but I can still use this character that I've thought about a bunch. Like, that's so fun. There's a collection of a bunch of different information and pictures on Kotaku if you would like to look at that. We have some interesting Nintendo information. Lots of big announcements happened this last week. Specifically, the Nintendo NX is going to be released in March of 2017, but we will most likely see hide nor hair of it at E3. They've also told us that instead of the new Zelda game being for Wii U exclusively, it's going to be a launch title for the NX, which, poor Zelda, this always happens to you. I don't know what to tell you, baby. But yeah, so nobody's seen anything of the NX, right? Like, we know it exists. They've talked about it pretty openly. We've seen patents for the controller, but we still haven't seen an actual for reals controller that wasn't a goof by somebody else. We have no idea what this console looks like. We know that it's supposed to be bridging the gap between the mobile handheld gaming market and the console couch gaming market, right? So I think if you're like me, you're imagining like a weird monster. Basically now, it's starting to look really weird, right? Because saying, oh, we're not gonna show it at E3, but it's definitely coming out March of 2017 is like, that's not a whole lot of time for you to let us see or touch this device. And I think for a lot of really intense Nintendo fanatics, they're starting to get really nervous about it. It's just that people are starting to feel like Nintendo is innovating for the sake of innovating. And that's not necessarily appealing to a lot of people. Some people are like, no, I just want, you know, I know that this is supposed to be top of the line in terms of graphics, but in terms of how you utilize it, like how much thought is going into that isn't sort of contained, right? Because I think what happens sometimes with companies, especially when they're trying to do this big new thing, is it's a bunch of people all together who are sort of trapped in the same building, working on the same thing for so long that they just keep saying, yes, that's good, yes, 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 right? And without enough voices coming in saying, no, it winds up being a problem. And then it releases, and everybody's like, oh, in terms of like being a consumer, this isn't very good for me. So yeah, there's concern. There's a lot of concern about Nintendo right now. But look, okay, we're getting some new Splatoon amiibos, so I don't know what everybody's complaining about. If you've been on Steam in the last couple of days and thought to yourself, why is that Hunger Games? Why are these movies on here? It turns out that Lionsgate has actually signed a deal with Steam and put 100 different movies on their platform. Now, this isn't necessarily a new thing. Well, like big time movies is a new thing, but they've had, you know, web series and indie movies go on there every now and then, and I personally have not utilized the service for that because for me it's like, Steam is there for games. I play games on Steam. But it seemed like for the most part, the sort of web shows and indie films that they were putting on there were kind of adjacent, right? Like, it would feel like people who played a lot of games might enjoy this visual media, yes? So now we have 100 like big time AAA Lionsgate movies on there. Now, I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but I think that this is starting to water down what Steam is. Like, yes, Steam, you probably made a ton of money off of this. I get it. It makes sense. But what your platform does isn't very clear anymore. We did games, and then you were like, okay, we're gonna start putting programs on here. And that was fine, like, I have You Need a Budget, you know, some programs on there here and there, many of which can help a game developer, made a ton of sense. I was like, sure, alright, yeah, there's still mostly games on there. And then you started putting, you know, like, video game documentaries on there. Alright, sure. A web series here and there. It's like, okay. 100 Lionsgate movies? Like, what a jump! Some people are doing the math and saying that the rent versus buying option is, like, pretty fair if you compare it to something like Redbox. So there's that. You can either rent the movie for, like, a few bucks for 48 hours, or you can buy the movie sometimes for, like, triple what the rental cost is, I believe. So it's different for every movie depending on how popular it is, how new it is, etc. But it's weird. it feels weird to me. It's weird for me to log onto Steam and be like, Katniss, why are you here? Despite that, I would love to see the numbers. I would love to see how many people logged onto Steam and were like, ooh, because we're in this position now where people, for the most part, can just have a subscription and see nearly anything that they want to see, right? So whether or not people are going to utilize this Steam service very much, I would be very intrigued to find out. I just don't understand why they would add more things onto Steam when they already have a problem with cultivating their video game library. Now they want to add in movies? I don't know. And as a final bit of news, YouTube has changed their Content ID system. It is a lot better now. In fact, when people were looking at that graphic, they were like, why hasn't it always worked this way? So basically what kept happening, right, is say that I uploaded a video and it had footage of one of Jesse's videos in it. Jesse could come to my video and Content ID it. He could claim it and say, my footage is in this video, they don't have the rights to use it, basically. And then YouTube would say, okay, and Jesse would start making money off of it unless I was able to successfully dispute it. Which makes no sense. The reason that this doesn't make sense is like any old yahoo could go to any old video and be like, that's mine, and claim it. And then suddenly all monetization on that video would stop. Not necessarily because something was proven, right? But because somebody said, you're not supposed to have this. And so YouTube goes, oops, our bad, and just shuts down the whole thing. So we have all of these people who are working really hard on videos and then having them claimed, and then not making any money off of them. So the new system now is, okay, once a claim is in, if you don't dispute it, then the money will start going to the person who claimed it. If you do dispute it, so make sure that if somebody like Content ID is a thing, that you dispute it. If you dispute it, then monetization will be collected by YouTube until you figure out who is in the right. So once the dispute is solved, all of the money that has been monetized on that video up till that point will go to the person who it rightfully belongs to. So yeah, you'll get the money a little bit late, but at least you'll get the money eventually, right? And you might say, well, but Dodger, like, what about, you know, like fair use and stuff like that? Like, what if somebody claims a thing, but technically you're able to use it under fair use, but they're like, but that's still mine. And that is all part of the dispute process, right? Like, if you're like, no, I have the rights to use this. Like, this was a trailer, I used a few seconds of it. It's not a big deal. That's all taken care of in that whole mishmashy goodness that is the dispute process. But really, the big point that everybody is excited about, and nobody's saying that this is a perfect solution, but it's a solution, right? And I think the way that it should have worked up to this point anyway, saying that that money that you could have made while that video was monetizing, the video is still making money and it will go to whoever we deem to be the rightful owner of the footage. So yeah, a lot of people are really excited. I have many friends who have wrestled on the regular with Content ID stuff, and it is no fun. As a person who has also wrestled with it and lost, it is no fun. But it does give us an option, which is very nice. But anywho, that's been my show. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a positive or a negative response, feel free to leave it in my comment section. And if you would like to watch any of my streams, including my Saturday morning Dooger every Saturday morning, as is the title, you can find me on twitch.tv/dexteritybonus. Okay? Have a fantastic day, guys. Thank you so much. Mwah! So I don't know what everybody's complaining about.